in different ways, as long as we call upon the name of Jesus, and that there is no name under heaven by which we must and we shall be saved, Lord. So God, I thank you for the talented people who create videos like this so that we can still sing to you even though there's not a person up here leading us. God, I thank you that you fill every single person in here who calls himself a follower of Jesus with your Spirit. And that with one voice, Lord, with one Spirit, that we can come together and worship your name, Jesus. So Lord, I pray that during this time, as we enter into a time of teaching and a time of learning, Lord, and maybe a time of dialogue, God, that you would speak. May my voice drown out, and Holy Spirit, may your voice speak loudly into the lives and the hearts and the minds of the men and women in this room. And then would you call us to action? Would you grow our faith, God? Would you challenge us this morning with what you have to say? And in the beautiful name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. You guys can all have a seat. All right. Good morning. Good morning. All right. When I was in Mexico, we used to say buenos. Right? And they don't say buenos dias. Well, at least when I was in Mexico, in Muskis, they said buenos. So buenos, and it's the way of saying hello, am I right? Okay. Got some Hispanic people in the back. And I don't know how to say hello in Congolese.
Jumbo.
Jumbo?
Yeah.
Like jumbo, like the elephant jumbo? It's an American idiom. Jumbo, yeah. I'm not American because I wouldn't know that. And then Hmong, right? In Hmong we say nyajong, right? So nyajong, that means hello. And then in France or French, we say bonjour. And then I think at nighttime you say bonsoir, right? Am I right?
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, yeah. Okay, so just a little language lesson for you guys this morning. Want you to know that so that when you talk to a few people from different ethnic backgrounds or different languages, that you have just a way of saying something, greeting them in their own native tongue. And I think that's really important for us, especially as a multi-ethnic church, that we begin to not only greet each other by saying hello, hey, how are you doing? When we really don't mean that question, right? We always say, hey, how are you doing? We really don't mean it. Because what if somebody starts like pouring out their heart to you? Are you really going to listen, or are you just like, hey, hi? That's really what you're saying. The how are you doing is just like an American idiom of saying like hi. But what if we actually took time to listen and learn each other's stories and invest into the lives of each other? And I think one way of breaking that ice is just using somebody's native tongue and going to them and saying bonsoir, or nyajong, or buenos, or jumbo, not dumbo. And so just greeting them in their tongue and allowing God to work in those conversations and seeing where he takes. And so I want to invite you today that not only during this time here at church on Sunday morning, but even outside of here, outside of these four walls, that you, as you walk through the city or through the mall or through your neighborhoods, as you see people of different color and ethnicity, or if they're not, if they look like you, go to them and have a conversation with them and greet them in their ethnic background, right? So if they're like Wisconsin, you say, hey there. Right? We almost sound like Ubers. Hey there. And if you go to Chicago, I don't know what Chicago people sound like, but Ray, you can tell me that. Hi. And if you go to New York, they don't even acknowledge that you exist. Okay? And so I just want to invite you guys to do that, to continue to meet new people and learn more about what God is doing throughout the world. And you know the crazy thing is that someday Jesus is going to invite people from every nation, tribe, and tongue to eat at his table. I don't know if you guys know this, but someday, like the potluck is just a small little painting and a small little picture of what we're going to do someday. And someday we are going to actually have a big feast. It's called the marriage feast of the Lamb. It talks about this in the last narrative of the Bible in Revelation. And it talks about this where John says that someday we're going to have this big feast and this big table and this big house with lots and lots of rooms and this big table with lots and lots of food where we're actually going to have this big feast where we get to eat and party with Jesus, and that he's going to call people from every tribe, nation, and tongue to that table. And that they're actually not going to look like you. They're going to look different than you. Now, I'm not sure what language we're going to speak yet. Maybe someday we'll find out. I don't think it's English, because English is boring. I love English. Don't worry. English is my second language. But English is good. But as I'll show you today, I think sometimes English doesn't give us the due service, the true meaning behind a lot of things, because we simplify it, which is okay too. So this morning, I want to take you to Hebrews chapter 12. Before I do that, thank God for technology. Sometimes technology is amazing, and sometimes technology is not fun. And so this morning, I am going to be able to control my presentation by using my phone. I mean, a lot of you guys knew that, right? All you millennials were like, psh, that was like 10 years ago, man. Right? And all you boomers and Xers were like, no way. I didn't know that. So I just want to take you guys here. All right, so I want to show you this picture. When you look at this picture, what do you see?
Cold.
Right? Snow, cold. Lonely guy. Hey, he's on what? What is he on? A path, a road, a journey. Do you think he probably has a destination, right? Hopefully. And do you think he's prepared for this? I mean, I don't know. He's at least got a jacket on and shoes. Yeah, he's at least got shoes on. But where's the destination? I mean, I don't really see it. But there's markers, right? Is there markers on the side of the path that show him at least where he needs to go and where he needs to stay?
Yeah, on the road.
Right? There is. But at least the path or the journey is marked clearly for him. He's been invited to it. The road is there. I believe, they say, picture has 1,000 meanings or 1,000 words. And when I look at this picture, I go, man, I believe he has a destination. He's going somewhere. And I say it's a he because I don't think it's a she, or she's a she, or he's a he. And so this guy is walking down this path that's clearly marked for him, that's kind of been paved. It's cold. And what happens when cold sets in? Hypothermia. What happens when hypothermia kicks in even more? Die. Right? And when you're dead, you're dead. And so you begin to turn purple.
So is that his path?
No, his path is not to death. I really don't know where he's going. I think this picture was taken somewhere in Alaska. And so my point in showing you this picture is that I think so often with us in our faith journey, or in our faith in Christ, in our journey with Christ, the last few weeks we've been talking about faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not yet seen. And so I think a lot of times in our faith journey, in our walk with Jesus, right, we sometimes get bogged down with the chaos and circumstances surrounding us. Sometimes we're on this journey unprepared, and we're walking along, and the coldness of the world, the coldness and the struggles of our circumstances cause this spiritual hypothermia in our lives, where if we don't keep moving, and if we don't get into warm places, or if we actually don't put on the right things and take off the wrong things, we will eventually die. And in this room this morning, and throughout this nation and throughout the world, on Sunday morning, as the church gathers together to worship and adore the name of Jesus, I believe we are full of many Christians who are on this faith journey who are dying. Or maybe their faith is dead. And I don't think that's the way God has intended for our faith to grow. Because the faith that He's given us, He has not only paved the way like this road is already paved and plowed and marked clearly for us, but He has given us a destination, and He has began this work in us. He has given us the right tools, but the thing we have to do is begin to run that race, begin to run that journey. And as we do that, we look to Him. We remember Him. And so last week, Pastor Steve Tao from North Carolina, he accidentally shared with us about, what happened in Hebrews chapter 11. What was this thing we call in the Christian world, or in the church world, the Hall of Faith, or the Hall of Fame of faithful men and women. And I don't know about you guys, but if you go through that list, everybody thinks they're great people. They weren't. Some of them were normal people. I mean, some of them were prostitutes. Some of them were just like normal guys and gals. And yet God used them because of their faith that He provided for them to continue to show us that, hey, like, you can do it too. That you are normal like these men and women. that you are no different. But the other thing too is that what's even greater than some of these men and women is that Jesus has come and he has revealed himself. And he's provided his Spirit as his source to help you continue on that faith journey. So if you have your Bibles, I know I jumped a little bit ahead of myself. Turn to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. I want to walk us through this today. As we look at faith, as we end our faith series this month in June, I want us to consider him, consider Jesus. Let's look to Jesus as we run the race. And so, Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. The author says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the perfecter, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted." And so the author of Hebrews, his whole goal in this letter to a bunch of Jewish Christians who in this church of Jewish Christians who are growing and they're being persecuted and they're being put down for their faith, he's trying to remind them that, guys, Jesus is better. And that Jesus is the perfect example. And in Hebrews chapter 11, he just gave us a ton of examples. And he says in Hebrews chapter 12, "Therefore, because we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses," all these men and women, they're not great. There's just a multitude of witnesses, right? That word, when we say, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses," we might take that and say, well, they're a great group of people. No, this just means there's a massive amount of people. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have gone before us, and we can actually read their stories, these historical documents and accounts that were listed in the Old Testament, and these 39 different literary texts that are written in the Old Testament. We can actually look at these and go, man, there's all these people, and we can look to them and go, man, they are standing by and cheering us on. And what the author of Hebrews is saying, that, guys, Jesus is actually better than them. But because of them, they're cheering us on. And therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, he gives us two commands in this. Right? And English, right? I love English. English is my second language. Right? If you guys got that joke. Okay. And so I love English. And God has blessed me with the ability to live in this country. And I love America. And I'm grateful that God has allowed me to be a U.S. citizen back in 2009. I'm grateful for the freedoms and the joys that we have. But when you look at the original Greek, you look at the original language of this author, and when he's writing to this group of Jewish Christians who are wrestling with, should we give up on Jesus? Is he really better than Judaism? Is he really better than life? Is he really better than the sufferings that we are going through? Because it seems like this path and this faith journey that we're on is so hard, and the world is so cold, and we're dying here. And what the author is trying to say is, guys, you've been called to do two things. I want to remind you of these two things. And we might read this and we say, hey, we should keep looking to these people, looking to people. Maybe that's a command. But it's not. So I highlighted it for you. The first thing that the author is trying to challenge us with is that we should run. Run. Right? And I don't know what you guys, man, every marathon, I'm not trying to be prejudiced or anything, but every marathon, like Kenyans and Africans are really good at marathons. I mean, usually they're the first ones. And rarely you'll see like a white guy running in the back. And he's like, just pumping. And these Kenyans and these Africans, they're just like, it seems like it doesn't even faze them. 26.1 miles, got that. I'm almost done. Right? But we were invited to this journey to run. We weren't just supposed to sit around and wait. And the crazy thing is that there is this great cloud of witnesses. There is this multitude of people who have gone before us. And they're like, hey, you can do it too because I've done it. And they're standing there and they're cheering us on. And they're saying, hey, like, you're just normal like me. You're just as messed up as me. You're just as weird as me. Just some people are willing to admit the fact that they're weird and they're kind of odd. But if I can do it, so can you. And so they're standing in the background and they're cheering us on. And it's like a coliseum full of thousands, if not millions of people who have gone before us. We can read their stories in the Old Testament. These historical documents. They're showing, hey, like, if these normal men and women, these messed up men and women can do it, so can I. And the crazy thing is that even Jesus came through the bloodline of some of these broken, messed up men and women. If you don't believe me, read in Matthew chapter 1, the first gospel of the New Testament. The genealogy of Jesus points out that there are some pretty messed up people in that genealogy. You probably won't want that in your bloodline. Ancestry.com. It's going to tell you that you're bad, bro. And so what Jesus is showing is, and he's reminding us, like, I'm better. And this author's trying to say, hey, he's better. And what he wants us to do is he wants us to run. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean? What does it mean that he wants us to actually run this race? That means that there's supposed to be actually movement in our faith. That Christianity was never meant to be complacent, that Christianity was never meant to be comfortable, and that Christianity was never meant to be about you. I know that in this narcissistic world that we live in, right, and I'll just make this a reality. Sometimes us churches, we feed into that. But the gospel, the fact that Jesus came and he created everything perfectly, and then we screwed it up, and he came and he made everything right through his blood and through his sacrifice on the cross, and then he rose from the grave, and then someday he's coming back again, and it's not about you. It's about him. And so he invites us to run this race, and this race and this faith journey that we're invited on, it actually involves movement. And that if we don't move, we are going to die. And that this faith that we have, this hope that we have, and this love that we have, if it does not involve action, if it does not involve us actually doing something about it, it is going to fade away. Just like hypothermia. If you don't do something about hypothermia, you're going to die. It's a promise. You will die. Unless for some crazy miracle. And there, I don't know if you guys watch that show, I Survived. Like sometimes I watch those shows and I'm like, man, those people should have died. I mean, they're stupid. They should have never been hiking in those type of woods, or they should have never been hiking on those glaciers. But they did, and they survived. And so for sometimes God allows those miracles to happen, but those are far and few between. And so what I want to invite you today is as we talk about faith, as we talk about the reality that we are all on this journey, I hope that you realize that we are actually commanded to move, to run towards Jesus, and to look to him. And that we're actually meant to grow, and that Jesus loves us too much to leave us where we are at. But he actually wants us to grow and to be mature, right? And so, let me share this with you. When I think of my sons, if I just focus on how messed up they are and how crazy they are, and trust me, 2 weeks ago we went camping and I had to send one of them home because he was driving me nuts, right? And so, he was probably driving some of you guys nuts. But the joy is if I just focus on his shortcomings, if I just focus on keeping him as a little baby and not expecting him to move and to grow and to mature to something else, that all I'm going to get is that. And we don't want that. I mean, how many of you guys still want to be babies? I mean, some of you might appreciate it because then, like, you get fed everything, you get your diaper changed, which is kind of weird, and like, everything's provided for you. But a lot of us, like, we love freedom, and we want to grow, and we actually want to move in some direction, and that has been the invitation that Jesus has given us, that not only do I invite you into a relationship with me, to love me and to grow with me, to know who I am through reading my word and spending time talking to me through prayer, and spending time meeting my family, which is the church or the people of God, but I actually have invited you to grow in your faith, to move in your faith, to become mature adults. I haven't invited you to just be little kids the rest of your life, but I want to grow you to be adults. So when I look at my sons and I look at kids in general, if our goal for them is not to become mature adults, then all we're going to do is raise kids. And parents, you know that. Your goal is not to raise little kids. Your goal is to raise mature adults. Because someday they're going to turn 18, or maybe they live in your house until they're 28 or 35, I don't know. And you want them to get out on their own, and you want them to grow up, and you want them to have maturity, and you want them to be able to be self-sufficient, provide for themselves. And I think it's no different from the heart of God to us. That he wants us to move, that he wants us to run this race. That he's invited us into this race, that we need to move. And I think, and I look at this text in Hebrews chapter 12, and it says, so let us run. And so what does that mean? What do we have to do to run? And He says, well, let us lay aside every weight and sin, which clings so closely. And then let us run. I don't know if you guys have ever ran through an airport. I had the opportunity of running through an airport in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, coming back from Haiti. After going through customs and everything, we were like booking it. And I was sweating bullets. And for some reason, right, Florida, they decided not to turn on the AC. And so we're booking it through the airport. And when you're running with like a backpack and your luggage, because you have to go through customs, so all your stuff has to get checked when you're coming back into the States, it is not fun. So you got all this baggage, all this excess weight. And as you run, we totally could have gotten to our gate like 15 minutes early. But I was running with about 9 other high schoolers and 2 other leaders. And so there's 12 of us. We're running through Fort Lauderdale Airport, and you could just see us from a mile away, just coming. Just this pile of like white people and this one Asian dude coming down this airport with all this baggage. But if we didn't have the baggage, we wouldn't have to worry about running because we could have gotten there a lot quicker. And I think so often in our faith, this command for us to run, we have to lay aside some of the weight and some of the sin that's in our lives. And if we would do that, we should actually run a lot easier. If you look at the picture of a runner, they don't go out there in winter boots. They don't go out there in like jeans. I mean, if they're crazy and weird, they do. But they don't go out there in the wrong gear. They put on the right gear. Most runners go out there with barely anything on. I mean, back in the day, right? Back in the Greco-Roman era, in the Olympics, they used to do naked. And I know that sounds weird, but then there's nothing holding them back. And they'd run barefoot. And today, right? Today we've come up with all this spandex, which is I think weird. You don't want to see me in spandex. And so just the spandex, which is weird, but it's beneficial to runners, and they're wearing these certain types of clothing and the shoes and all this stuff to help them actually run the race, to finish. And then there's a goal. And there's a course that's actually set for them. And so this idea that the author is trying to give to us, to show us, is that, man, Jesus has given us a race. That he has set the course. That he's actually the one who started it. He's the one who created it. And he's the one who's going to provide for us the strength and the nourishment to get through it. And that there is an end goal. There is a finish line. And that all of us someday are going to get there. And if we go back to Hebrews chapter 11, verses 38 and 39, the author is telling us, and he's saying, like, all these men and women, they were affirmed and they were confirmed for their faith, and they were given praise for their faith, but they still haven't achieved the final goal because they're still waiting for us. And that someday the culmination and the finalization of our faith journey, or this race that we're on called the faith journey or life, that someday we're all going to celebrate it together all at once. And that we are all going to finish. Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 says, he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. And that Jesus is going to do that in you. And so church, Christian, if you are a follower of God this morning, I urge you and I invite you to move. I invite you to run. Sometimes you might have to crawl. Sometimes you might need people to drag you. But you are invited to move in your faith, to run this race that has been set before you. And that is the command, that we lay aside the weight and the sin. And I just want to point that out to you. You see, the author clearly says weight and sin. See, there are sins in your life that you need to let go of, and I'll get back. I'll go there when we talk about what do we do with this. But there's weights. There's good things in your life that may be beneficial to you. But we actually need to let go of some of those things. I mean, it could be social media. It could be food. It could be alcohol. None of those things are bad. I mean, everything's in proportion. Everything's in balance. And if we would actually do well to process, is this really holding me back? And I'm not trying to highlight those 3 things, but there's many more good things. I mean, it could be friends. I mean, some friends may be beneficial to you. It could even be your job. But if they're holding you back in your journey with Christ, in your intimacy with Jesus, in your relationship with God, then I hope that you would be willing to at least begin to process that idea. Should I let this go? Is this really holding me back? Because it's a weight. And if I'm supposed to run in this race, if I'm supposed to move in some direction, then maybe I need to let this thing go so that I can do it a lot easier. Because the more weight you carry around, the harder it is going to be for you to run and thrive. And I think a lot of times we walk around with baggage in our life. We willingly carry it because we're like, hey, I love these things that I'm carrying more than I love Jesus. I love social media, or I love food, or I love my friends, or I love my family, or I love my vehicle, or my home, or comfortability, or materialism, whatever it is. Some of those things are good, but we love those things above Jesus. And so we'd be willing to carry them around, knowing that it's going to slow us down. And I think some of you know what those things are. I think God has revealed them to you through people, through reading His Word, or maybe you've come to self-actualization about it. And so I would invite you to begin to process it. And then the second command that God gives us, the second command, is looking to Jesus. Looking to Jesus. Verse 3, the author says, consider Him who endured from sinners such hostility against Himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. That term, consider Him, it's not an asking, it's a command. The idea of considering or contemplating or looking to Him or seeing Him as the superior example of our faith, of what it means to actually have a relationship with God. You see, because as a Christian, Jesus is our ultimate example. Not Bee Vang, not some of the people in this room, not Paul, not Peter, right? They're like many examples of Jesus, and they're flawed in their own ways, but Jesus is the perfect example. He's the superior example. He's the better example than all the people that were listed in Hebrews chapter 11. And what the author says, let's look to Jesus. Let's consider Him and the fact that as Jesus was following God, as Jesus was running this race and He was pursuing God, He was persecuted. I mean, his family tried to sway Him at times. I mean, He wasn't popular. He was very, very, very countercultural. He challenged a lot of people's beliefs. And everybody thinks that He's popular. His friends ditched Him in His deepest, darkest moments. And I look at Jesus and that the fact that everything that Jesus invites us to do, right? I hear this from one of my friends all the time. He says this, it's like everything that Jesus actually invites us to do, He has already done Himself. Hebrews chapter 4 says that Jesus was tempted in every way, and yet He was without sin. And that He can actually relate to us. And so in His humanity, I'm going, man, He gets it. And He's like us. And I want you to see this, okay? In verse 2. Verse 2, the author says, looking to Jesus. He doesn't say looking to Christ or looking to the Lord or looking to the King of Kings. He doesn't give him, he's not giving him this big title right now. He's kind of focusing on His humanity. That Jesus is fully God, yes, but He's also fully man. And in His humanity, He lived the life that we should have lived, and He walked the faith and ran the journey that we should have run. And so He's pointing to the fact that in His humanity, He wrestled with pride and lust, and that all these things that we wrestle with as human beings, and He's going, and He's the best example. So in your struggle and wanting to give up, in the coldness and the circumstances of life, saying, look to Jesus, consider Him, remember Him, and continue to keep your eyes forward on Him. If you've ever run before, I don't run very much. I used to when I was in high school a little bit. But if you've ever run before, if all you're thinking about in the moment is like, man, my calves are just tightening up, and I should just give up. Like, it's getting too hard. Oh man, people are looking at me. Maybe I should speed up. Maybe I should slow down. Like, how's my body bouncing around? Like, if you're just so focused on yourself, and you're focused on the circumstances that you're in, and you're not focused on the end goal, and you're not focused on why you're doing it, and the purpose for you doing it, you're going to give up. But I think if you ask most runners, maybe all runners, I don't know this for sure, but they will tell you, you gotta focus on the end. Like, hey, if I'm going to run 5 miles, I'm going, okay, 5 miles. I'm going to keep telling myself that. I'm going 5 miles, right? Or I'm going to run 1 mile. I'm going to run half a mile. But we all have to start somewhere. And I think when we look to this and the author saying, look to Jesus, remember that he is our final goal. And that someday this feast that we're going to have is the finality, the finalization of what we're going to end up. And so my hope is that would be an encouragement to you. And that we can focus on a lot of the circumstances that are happening around us. We can focus on how hard it is. And he's saying, hey, look to Jesus, man. It was hard for him too. It really was. If you don't believe me, read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It wasn't easy. Everybody thinks, it must have been easy for Jesus because he was God. I said, well, let's put you in his shoes and walk with these 12 idiots for 3+ years. I mean, if you ever dealt with anybody for 3+ years, like in close proximity, it's hard, right? Being in a married relationship, it's hard. You love each other, but it's hard. And so he experienced like disownment, he experienced pain, he experienced suffering, he experienced hunger, thirst, and going in Jesus' humanity, he relates to us. And everything that he invites us to do, he's already done. And so as we run this race, I hope that we would consider Jesus, that he is the prime example. So when we think of faith, that we would think of Jesus. And that would be our evaluation of where we are at. But I hope that doesn't discourage you. I hope that would actually encourage you to know that not only is he inviting us into this race, and not only is he inviting us to look to him, but he invites us to look to him because he is the starter of our faith. He's the one who began it. He's the one who started, he's the one who ignited that movement of our faith. He's the source of our faith. And he's the one who's actually going to provide for us the faith that we need. And that he is the one who is a sample for us. He's the perfect example. He laid it out for us on the cross. And I just go, and man, if you think suffering is tough, try going to a cross and being crucified on this piece of wood that was meant as a curse. I mean, people were executed back in that day, but the most excruciating and the most embarrassing way of dying was to be crucified to a Roman cross. And he says, the author says that Jesus despised the shame of the cross. And that he used the cross as a story and as an example of his love for us. And as a sacrifice of what he would do to redeem mankind. And that he would change the cross around. And he would use it as a restoration. And even in the Old Testament, it says everybody who's hung on a tree is cursed. And that Jesus became the curse for us. And then I look at that and I go, man, like he gets it. Like he gets my pain. And he gets my struggle. He gets the loneliness. And he gets the struggle of trying to follow God in this chaotic and in this hard world with all the different circumstances coming our way. And when I get to that point where I'm like, man, I should just give up. I should just give up. And I go, man, Jesus went to a cross for me. My worth and my dignity were determined at that cross when he said, I love you. And for the joy set before me, the author says in Hebrews chapter 12, for the joy set before me, and as he's hanging on that cross, he's saying, the joy set before me, the joy of pleasing God the Father and fulfilling what he's called me to do, the joy of fulfilling all these prophetic words that those witnesses before him has already said, and the joy of seeing many people, men and women from different tribes, nations, and tongues come to know him and come to find freedom and hope in him. He's saying that's why. And so my hope is that as we run our race, right? All of us run a little different race. My hope is that as we run that race, that we look to Jesus, that we consider him. And when we feel like giving up, that we look to the cross as a reminder. So what do we do with this, right? What do we do with Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 3? That we should run and that we should consider him or look to Jesus. I came up with 3 words. What are you going to do with this week? I want you to ask. I want you to ask. I want you to act. It's my challenge for you. I believe what today's message involves action. But before it involves action, it involves getting rid of things, and it involves us actually asking. And so as you go throughout your week, I just want to invite you and challenge you to spend time with Christ this week. It could be 10 minutes. It could be 15 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be a whole day. But I just want to invite you to actually sit before him in stillness and in quietness by yourself. Say, God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do with Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3? What do you want me to do with my faith? How do I run this race that you've set before me? How do I not just walk and crawl and maybe be dragged, but how do I actually thrive in this thing we call faith? And I want you to begin to ask that. And I want, maybe for you it starts here. Read Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. And just say, God, would you just reveal to me right now what you want me to do? I invite you to do that. I believe the Spirit of God speaks. I believe God speaks through His Word. I believe God still speaks through His Spirit. I believe God speaks through circumstances and life things that happen. But I believe God speaks through His Word, and it never comes back void. And so I invite you to just read that part. Maybe read the Hebrews chapter 11 and say, God, what are you saying to me in this? What do you want me to do with this? And write some of those things down. Because you're going to be surprised that maybe some thoughts are going to come to your mind. And then maybe it's like, hey, B, I want you to get rid of these things. You need to axe some of these things, right? You need to just put some of these things to the chopping block and get rid of them. Because maybe they're not sin, but they're weighing you down. So maybe social media. I mean, some of you guys have, gotten rid of your Facebook, and I'm not telling you to do that. I want you to do it because you are truly hearing from the Spirit of God. You're truly hearing from God to say, hey, I want you to get rid of these things because they're weighing you down. They're holding you back from running this thing we call faith, this race that we call faith. And for maybe some of you, it's just saying, hey, I want you to get rid of some of the sin in your life. Anger, pride, lust, pornography, drugs. I'm not saying all drugs are bad, right? Some drugs actually help us get healthy. But you know what those things are. And so I just want to invite you into that time with Christ and ask Him. And say, Jesus, what do you want me to get rid of? What do you want me to ask? What do you want me to put to the chopping block? So that I could cut those things away. I could cast off those weights. Get rid of them. Because they easily entangle to me. They cling to me. How do I get rid of them? And then I want you to take action on those things. Actually do something about it. Don't just talk about it. Don't just share it with people. And I want you to share that with people. Because accountability helps. But do something with it. And if it's like, hey, I want you to shut this off, or hey, I want you to end this relationship, or hey, I want you to not do this anymore, or hey, I want you to go and apologize for this, or hey, I want you to invest into these people, or hey, I want you to ask these people to come into your life, or hey, you need to spend more time with me, or hey, I want you to read my word. Hey, I want you to spend time just talking to me and listening to me. Or hey, I want you to learn how to love people more, so go hang out with these people who are really annoying so that they grow your love and patience for you. I don't know what that is for you, but I want to invite you to that. Because we have a multitude of witnesses before us who are cheering us on, and they're not sitting in the stands just going, yay, right? They're not doing a golf clap, right? But they're actually like they're cheering like the Packers are in the Super Bowl, right? And if you're a Bears fan or a Vikings fan, I'm sorry for you. But they're cheering like the Packers are in the Super Bowl, and they're excited and they're shouting, they're screaming, they're saying, "You can do this, you can do this." And even greater than that is that Jesus is the superior example, and that because of Him, let's run. Let's just not just walk or crawl, or maybe just freeze here to death, but let's run. And let's consider the chaos that He went through, the circumstances that He went through, and to know that we can do it because not only is our faith started by Him, not only is our faith sourced by Him, not only is our faith sampled by Him and His example, but He's actually the one who sustains to the end. And so that's my encouragement to you this morning. As you spend time with Jesus this week, would you ask Him what He's doing? Would you ask Him, what do you want me to ask out of my life? What do you want me to get rid of? And then would you actually take action to do it? And invite other people to be involved in your life for accountability. We can begin to do that today, guys. We can do that this afternoon at the Changs. Like get into a group of circle of people that you know, or people that you don't know, and start talking about this stuff. Or maybe this week get together with some people and read this together and say, hey man, hey, let's just spend some time in prayer and in silence and say, Jesus, what are you saying to us? And then share that with each other. And keep each other accountable. Maybe write up a list of things that are beneficial and things that are like not helping you out. And say, hey, is this stuff really worth it? Maybe some of the things that you have, like, can I just get rid of this stuff? then do something about it. Don't just talk about it. Do something about it. Act on it. Because faith without action, I don't think is helpful. Right? So ask these questions. Spend time with the Lord. Contemplate these things. This is what I want to say to you. Faith is not real until it becomes conviction or belief that leads to a conveying courageous Christ-likeness in the face of chaos. I'll say this again. Faith is not real until it becomes conviction that leads to conveying courageous Christ-likeness in the face of chaos. That's my prayer that you would act, that you would act, that you would act upon what God is revealing to you. As you read Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. So I want to read this one more time to you. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run the endurance, the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the perfecter, can't really see it, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and was seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. May we do that together, Refuge. And to begin that, I want us to go into a time of communion. I want us to end our day today and our time worshiping God through teaching, worshiping God through learning, and resting with his word by remembering his death, his burial, and his resurrection, his sacrifice on this cross. Paul, a pretty messed up dude, used to throw Christians in jail, was there and was approving the murder of believers back in the New Testament, the Greco-Roman era. He says, and I give to you what I've witnessed myself, and what I know myself, that on the night that Jesus Christ was betrayed, he took a piece of bread and he broke it and he says, eat this and do this in remembrance of me. And then he took a cup of wine and he passed it amongst them. He says, as you drink this, remember my blood being poured out for you, and do this in remembrance of me. And so I want to invite you guys up to remember that Jesus Christ was broken. His body was literally broken for you. And that his blood was poured out on the cross. And that your worth and your dignity was shown and proven on that cross. And it was solidified when he rose from the grave 3 days later. And so we celebrate this communion table. We celebrate the Lord's table to remember and to commemorate the fact that, yes, we are messed up and his body was broken and his blood was poured out. But someday we're going to do this again. We're going to have a big feast, a big house, and a big table. And every nation, every tribe, and every tongue is going to be invited to this table. And so this time, I just invite you, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, if you would like to continue to run this race and look to Jesus, remember what he's done. Body being broken, his blood being poured out. I just invite you to come up at this time and grab a piece of bread and a cup, and when everybody has it, we're going to take it together, okay? So, come on up, and we'll do it together in a little bit.